In this video, we'll uncover the times when fake gurus were exposed by real spiritual leaders. Stick around to discover how these frauds were exposed and learn how to spot the difference between manipulation and true wisdom. First up, what happens when a spiritual rebel takes on one of the most powerful figures in religion? Let's start with Pope John Paul II. The Pope once labeled Osho as dangerous, accusing him of threatening traditional values. But Osho didn't flinch. Instead, he flipped the narrative, taking aim at the Vatican's hypocrisy with brutality.
I am certainly not a pope. I cannot be. I am not that serious a man.
He didn't just criticize the Pope, he dismantled the Pope's reputation as a real guru by calling him out as a figurehead of an institution that he believed was built on fear, manipulation, and exploitation.
Not the logical conclusion of the power of one man over a group of people?
That's exactly what popes have been doing.
Osho even went so far as to say the Pope should be behind bars, holding him accountable for centuries of orchestrated psychological control and exploitation disguised as religion.
Pope Paul.
He should be behind the bars.
He also accused the Pope of representing a system that amassed fortunes, while preaching humility and charity. Osho's words directly confronted the Pope's authority, but there is more. He didn't just stop at the Pope, he went even further to challenge institutions like the Catholic Church that, according to him, were using fear and guilt to maintain control over their followers. For him, the Church's power was rooted in fear of sin, guilt, and eternal damnation. He argued that these psychological tools were used not to liberate, but to control. He once said, "There is no heaven and there is no hell. They are not geographical, they are psychological." What happens when a cult leader thinks he can buy legitimacy with $1 million donation to the Dalai Lama? Next is Keith Raniere, the leader of the infamous NXIVM cult. Known for his manipulative tactics and dangerous practices, Raniere thought he could boost his credibility by associating with one of the world's most respected spiritual leaders, the Dalai Lama. In 2009, Raniere invited the Dalai Lama to speak at a NXIVM event in Albany, New York. To sweeten the deal, NXIVM's wealthy followers reportedly donated $1 million to Tibetan charities. At first, the Dalai Lama agreed to visit, likely unaware of NXIVM's dark side. But as reports surfaced about NXIVM's disturbing practices, questions arose. Why would a revered spiritual leader associate with such a controversial group? When the Dalai Lama learned more about NXIVM, he made a bold decision. While he honored his commitment to visit, he refused to endorse Raniere or the organization, delivering a subtle yet powerful rejection.
Because behind this is a beautiful sort of face. Is some rotten things there? Then, this is wrong.
This rejection marked the beginning of the end for NXIVM. The group faced increased scrutiny, and by 2018, Raniere was arrested and sentenced to 120 years in prison for crimes like sex trafficking and racketeering.
There were 15 impact statements in court today, some describing the and emotional abuse they faced, even being branded with Raniere's initials.
Next is what happens when the world tries to turn a real guru into a messiah. Next up is Jiddu Krishnamurti, who found himself at the center of a movement that declared him the world teacher, a messianic figure destined to guide humanity into a new age of enlightenment.
This Theosophical Society decided to announce to the world that he is the world teacher.
It all started when the Theosophical Society, led by Annie Besant and Charles Leadbeater, built an entire spiritual movement around his supposed divine mission.
Besant toured the United States often, speaking in most of the major U.S. cities within a month's time. At the Parliament, she spoke on the essential unity of all religions and of all peoples.
They formed the Order of the Star in the East, promoting Krishnamurti as the face of their vision. To his followers, he was a savior.
Theosophists jubilantly anointed this unlikely 14-year-old the next Messiah. His name was Jiddu Krishnamurti.
But as Krishnamurti grew older, he began to question the very system that elevated him.
He had grown uncomfortable with his role in the movement and felt he had become merely an icon placed on a pedestal.
What seemed like a noble mission began to feel like a tool for control. In 1929, at a massive gathering of his followers, Krishnamurti shocked the world by dismantling the very movement that idolized him. This act exposed the flaws in the Theosophical Society's approach. By monopolizing spiritual truth, pushing blind faith, and turning spirituality into a business, the Society's true intentions were revealed.
It was a dispute of authority between William Judge and Annie Besant over the control of the esoterics.
What happens when a real guru's teachings are called dangerous by so-called mental health experts? Byron Katie rose to fame by teaching a deceptively simple method called the work. These 4 questions have helped thousands of people challenge their thoughts and find peace. But while Katie's followers see her as a true guru, some mental health critics call her approach dangerous.
I can appreciate what she's doing, and I can even acknowledge this can produce results, effective results, but you're walking a dangerous edge here depending on how serious the situation is.
Katie's journey began with her own battle against crippling depression. After a life-changing realization, she built a global movement that empowers people to question their beliefs. But as her influence grew, so did the scrutiny. Critics like Carla Helbert argue that Katie's method can re-traumatize vulnerable people by oversimplifying their emotional struggles.
It's really a blaming the victim situation.
Wow.
And then that ends up making the grieving person or the traumatized person feel ashamed of their response.
They say telling someone to just question their thoughts might do more harm than good.
Yep. But then it starts to get really precarious if you're talking about or facing something like domestic physical abuse, or maybe something even worse than that.
Although Katie's critics argue that her approach is dangerous for vulnerable people, when asked if she would pose the same questions to a rape victim, she responded with profound empathy.
I don't see them as someone that's been I see them as an equal. I understand. What do I do? What do I do in a situation like that? My arms around them, listening, quiet. That just gives them the safest place.
This response highlights the nuance in her method, a balance between challenging beliefs and respecting the emotional state of those suffering. Critics often overlook this essential depth in her approach. Her method challenges us to rethink our beliefs, confront emotional pain, and embrace transformative growth. It's not always comfortable, but for those willing to do the work, it's often life-altering. What do you get when a self-proclaimed alpha male clashes with one of the world's most respected spiritual teachers? Next is Andrew Tate, self-proclaimed alpha male and lifestyle guru, who built an empire selling the dream of wealth and domination. But beneath the flashy cars and private jets was a darker truth. Tate was exposed by CoffeeZilla, a YouTuber known for uncovering scams, for running programs that many claimed were glorified pyramid schemes. And when Tate's aggressive philosophy clashed indirectly with Eckhart Tolle's timeless teachings, the difference between a scammer and a true guru became crystal clear.
Tate is under house arrest and being investigated by Romanian prosecutors for accusations including human trafficking and exploiting women, which he denies.
On a podcast, Tate dismissed mindfulness as a waste of time, saying, "Life isn't about sitting around meditating, it's about winning, achieving, and being the best."
I want everybody who's watching this video to understand that if you are not extremely successful, all of your parents, your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, everyone you love and care about will be forgotten in time. Nobody will give a shit about who you are.
His bold claims may have energized his followers, but they also revealed his focus on superficial success rather than genuine personal growth. Although never directly engaged with Tate, Tolle, a spiritual teacher and best-selling author, offers a completely different perspective.
They achieved fame and fortune. There was an initial time period when there was elation and they were on a continuous high. But then gradually, more and more, they experienced a very deep low in their mental emotional state, including depression and not wanting to live.
To Tolle, Tate's win-at-all-cost mentality is nothing more than the ego's trap, keeping people stuck in a never-ending loop of dissatisfaction. While Tate promises success through dominance, critics argue this method exploits insecurities, pushing people to buy into a lifestyle that primarily benefits him. Meanwhile, Toll's teachings quietly dismantle the illusion that more money or status can bring true happiness. The contrast is stark. One teaches people to conquer their minds. The other sells a pipe dream. In the end, Toll's wisdom reminds us that the ultimate victory lies in finding peace within.
Alive, peace, joy, peace, a peaceful, joyful sense of aliveness.
If Eckhart shows us the trap of chasing wealth, Osho reveals the hypocrisy of those who preach abandoning it. Next is fake renunciation gurus who teach people to leave the worldly pleasures and fill their bags with the money those people left behind.
That to keep Mahatma Gandhi poor, we have to waste fortunes.
He directly exposed the hypocrisy of renunciation gurus, spiritual leaders who preach detachment from wealth and pleasure while living in opulence themselves. His bold critique turned the spotlight on a troubling trend in spirituality.
So it is natural. I'm the rich man's guru.
A guru who asks you to renounce the world is often the first to enjoy its luxuries. Osho declared, exposing what he saw as exploitation hidden under the guise of spirituality. According to Osho, these teachings weren't about enlightenment, they were tools of control. By convincing followers to give up money, relationships, and pleasures, these gurus secured comfortable lives for themselves while leaving their disciples struggling.
My conception, a beautiful, flowering being, is not that of austerity.
True spirituality, Osho argued, isn't about rejecting life, but celebrating it. Poverty, he believed, wasn't a virtue, but a tool used to keep people submissive. All the religions have been teaching, renounce the world. I teach you, transform the world. Renouncing it is sheer cowardice, and by renouncing it, nothing significant happens. For him, being spiritual meant living fully without being enslaved by desires. What happens when Osho slams the renowned humanitarian for glorifying poverty instead of ending it? Next is Mother Teresa, a figure revered worldwide. Yet Osho didn't hesitate to rip apart her saintly image.
ये दीन दरिद्रों की सेवा और कुछ भी नहीं है सिवाय कैथोलिक ईसाई धर्म का प्रचार। कैसे कैथोलिकों की संख्या दुनिया में बढ़ जाए, भिखमंगों को भोजन दो, ऐसे रोटी खिलाकर, दवा देकर लोगों का धर्म परिवर्तन करो।
Osho didn't just criticize her, he accused her of glorifying poverty and called her a deceiver and a hypocrite. While she was hailed as a beacon of compassion, Osho saw her actions as perpetuating a cycle of suffering. When asked about Mother Teresa, he even said,
Mother Teresa.
It is time for her to jump into a lake.
Was Mother Teresa helping the poor, or was she romanticizing their misery? Osho asked, forcing the world to confront an uncomfortable truth, the question that many asked even after Osho was gone.
That Teresa takes advantage of the poor and terminally ill for opportunities to showcase compassion, rather than a desire to help care for them.
Osho exposed what he saw as blatant contradictions. Despite receiving millions in donations, many of her facilities lacked basic medical care. To her supporters, this was spiritual devotion, seeing divinity in human suffering. Even Christopher Hitchens, in his book, The Missionary Position, aligned with Osho's views. He accused Mother Teresa of promoting suffering as a spiritual ideal and failing to confront the systems that caused it. Osho's critique wasn't just aimed at Mother Teresa, it was a scathing attack on a philosophy that, in his eyes, kept the poor in chains under the guise of compassion. For him, true charity wasn't about sustaining suffering, it was about breaking free from it. Fake gurus offer shortcuts, say what we want to hear, and demand loyalty. Real gurus? They do the opposite. The Dalai Lama exposed Keith Raniere. Jiddu Krishnamurti walked away from global adoration to stay true to himself. Eckhart Tolle didn't engage with critics like Andrew Tate. His teachings alone dismantled Tate's philosophy. And Osho, for all his controversies, he called out hypocrisy, even if it meant challenging the Pope or Mother Teresa. The real masters aren't afraid to lose followers, wealth, or status. Fake gurus depend on them because, without them, they have nothing. And with that, let's end today's video. So what do you think? How do fake gurus manage to gain such a massive following, even when their teachings lack substance? Which real guru do you believe deserves more recognition for their authenticity? Drop your comments below. Before you go, don't forget to check out my recent video.